Hello, welcome to my presentation on poverty in contemporary Britain presented by me Oluwapelu Mr. Oladipo. Poverty refers to the state or condition in which people or community lack the financial resources and essential for a minimum standard of living, such as proper housing, clean water, healthy food, and medical attention. It can also include access to healthcare, education, and transportation. In government circles, poverty is often further defined as absolute and relative poverty. Poverty in the UK is defined as a situation where a household income is below 60% of the median household income after housing costs for that year. Households in destitution are those who have gone without two or more essentials in the past month because they could not afford them, or if their income is extremely low. There is no single best measure of poverty. The government published a survey of income poverty in the UK called Household Below Average Income, which set the poverty line in the UK at 60% of the median UK household income. This is the measure of relative poverty, while absolute poverty is where a household income is less than 60% of the median as it stood in 2011. Absolute poverty can be defined as the lack of adequate resources that can be utilized to keep both physical and mental health together. When an individual earnings drop below a particular level, individuals are considered in absolute poverty since they cannot provide their basic needs, including water, food, shelter, basic education, and medical care. According to the United Kingdom definitions, it shows that a person cannot afford their basic needs. Comparing poverty level with time is helpful because necessities change. Quality of life and inequality issues are rarely considered when measuring absolute poverty. To accurately represent home income, certain organizations make various changes. For instance, the Department for Work and Pensions assess poverty levels before and after housing expenses, since these expenses varies greatly throughout the country and are leading more individuals into poverty as it rise. Relative poverty can also be long-term, which means some individuals have little or no chance of having comparable standards of lifestyle as other individuals in the same community presently average to. They are locked in a class of low relative income when compared to absolute poverty. Relative poverty has shifting standards that depend on the state of the economy. It examines the number of individuals who are falling behind financially, those who manage to make enough to survive but are unable to avoid the standard events and possibility available to those with average incomes, and what is referred as an ordinary living pattern. The impact of industrialization, urbanization, and economic system changes on poverty in the United Kingdom has been multifaceted. Industrialization during the late 18th century brought about economic development and improved living standards for some people. However, it also led to harsh working conditions, labor exploitation, and urban slums, contributing to pockets of poverty. Urbanization closely tied to industrialization concentrated economic activities in cities, fostering commerce, education, and cultural exchange, while it improved infrastructures and access to service. Rapid urbanization outspaced development in slums and unevenly distributed economic opportunities. The economic system changes from a pre-20th century capitalist approach to a 20th century welfare state, especially post-war II, aimed to address social inequalities. Policies like the National Health Service and social welfare programs sought to reduce poverty. In the late 20th century and beyond, economic policies and globalization influenced income inequality. While some benefited from increased trade, others faced job displacement and wage stagnation, contributing to disparities in living standards. Income inequality has been a significant factor influencing poverty. Despite overall economic growth, government policies include social welfare programs Minimum wage laws and education initiatives have played a crucial role in mitigating poverty by providing a safety net for vulnerable populations. The measurement of the poverty in the UK involves various thresholds and definitions, considering factors such as the minimum income standard and the percentage of people living in low-income households. Charles Booth and Sybil Rountree late 19th and early 20th century British poverty and socio-economic studies are essential. Charles Booth, social reformer and philanthropist, conducted one of Victorian London's largest poverty investigations. He studied life and labours of the people in London 1886 to 1903. Booth meticulously studied London area social and economic reality by wealth and social status. He colored areas by riches or poverty, black for the impoverished. Booth's London poverty research broke stereotypes and uncovered reasons. Rowntree, British psychologist and philanthropist, investigated York poverty. A study of town life in 1901 was published. Rowntree used more rigorous statistics to build on Booth's work. He sought to identify poverty causes and separate them from external factors like low wages and unemployment. According to his findings, structural economic issues, not personal irresponsibilities, created much poverty. The Booth and Rowntree research influenced British poverty perception and social policies. Their work exposed poverty and helped solve its root cause through legislation and social remedies. Under the Household Below Average Income statistics, there are three main measures of poverty in the UK, which are relative, absolute, and material poverty. Under absolute poverty, housing expenses are measured before and after. Different measures of poverty divided by expendable household incomes are utilized and the pattern may differ. Two common measures are individual in relative low income, those who reside in households with earnings below 60% of the median during that year; individual in absolute low income, those who reside in households with earnings below 60% of adjusted for inflation the median earnings in some base year. Therefore, the relative low income measures compare the lowest income household to the rest of the total population for that year, while the absolute low income measures if the standard of living at the bottom has improved as time passes. Low income and economic hardship can be measured by assessing household access to basic services and products before or after the cost of housing. Income will be estimated. People with lower income spend more of their earnings for housing, so the level of poverty are higher after paying for housing. Different people define poverty differently. It is one reason the UK also several methods to measure it. To determine if poverty is absolute or relative, you must set threshold and gather data to determine the amount of those in poverty. A relative approach to set a adaptable standard for what people should be able to depend on to satisfy their needs, and everyone who drops below it will be included. The absolute poverty method maintains a constant level. This approach may result in a huge gap among current poverty and historical standards. Absolute poverty has lost its place in the field of economics, particularly in states having expanding economies and higher standard of living. The relative method for poverty measurement is more effective and helpful because it utilizes current statistical information. Today, relative poverty is primarily used given that it shows the number of households relatively overlooked by those with a good standard of living. Compared to the relative method, the absolute method shows when the income has risen over time. For this reason, many financial specialists globally recommend a mixture of Methods for measuring poverty to identify area of development. Thank you for listening.